Hello there, this is Rom Wills coming back at you with yet another video. The following is a preview for a paid video that will drop tomorrow morning, Wednesday, July 5th, called The Sexual Personalities of Women. So sit back, enjoy the preview, get a flavor of what's to come, and look forward to the video tomorrow morning. Talk to y'all later. Peace. Greetings, fam. This is Rom Wills, and this is one of my special videos, the 5 sexual personality types of women. Now, if you had followed me for a long time, I've been promising this video for, well, a long time. And basically, what I'll be doing is talking about 5 personality types that you will find in women, particularly with regard to how they express themselves sexually. Now, to understand, these personality types also apply to men, but there are some differences. And the reason that I focus just on women, well, just for a pragmatic reason. Most of the people who will be purchasing this video will be men. My support base is over 90% men. And, I'm just going to, why should I do something on the men? Now, I can do something for the men, just so men can understand themselves better. But I'll do that in a separate video. Now, understand something about what I will be presenting. It took me a while to bring it out because I had to really think about how I was going to present it. Because the information for people, especially people who are familiar with the concept of counterfeit personas, or they are familiar with how many indigenous cultures will classify people, they'll realize, they'll say, well, Rom isn't saying a lot. One of the things I wanted to do was simplify everything. I wanted to simplify everything for everyone, just so the average Joe who hasn't been introduced to many metaphysical concepts, or many of the concepts that to fully explain this I would have to get into, just so somebody can understand what I'm talking about. I wanted the average Joe to be able to listen to this video and then go out right away and be able to have an idea of who he's dealing with. In fact, as a man is listening to this, they'll think, oh, wait a minute, that's what my woman was doing. Because a few of these personality types, particularly the third one, is easy to recognize because I can provide examples of each one. So I wanted that. Now, if I got deeper into it, I would also talk about their social personalities, how they would, what type of businesses they would get into, what type of professions. I mean, it gets deep. It's deep to the point I could do a video, probably a 2 or 3 hour video, just on each personality type alone. That's how deep it is. But I'm giving y'all stuff in like 15 to 20 minutes, just a basic thing. I mean, this is a basic overview, just so you can just go out there and say, oh, okay, yeah, and people gonna recognize it. Women, any women who listen to it, they're gonna recognize themselves. Now, to give you some background where I'm coming from, I first learned about these personality types back with a book of a gentleman who I've mentioned a lot on my videos, Master Yao and Yamache Morris. And his book was called Amumara, The Natural Blueprint for Sexual Relationships. And it's interesting how I came across that book. I remember before that, 2 years before I met him, I was looking for information about men and women who exuded a natural sex appeal. People who managed to attract attention from the opposite sex without spending money, without using games, without wearing makeup or anything special. And even in some cases without being considered classically attractive. Basically, I was looking for information on sexual charisma. And I remember I was at a forum where Master Yao was speaking, and I remember I approached him, and I was just throwing it out there because I halfway thought he would just look at me crazy or be ready to laugh at me or something, because people weren't talking about this back then, right? So I said, well, do you have any information in your book about people with natural sex appeal? And he said, oh yeah, just look at this chapter. Now, it's funny, I didn't have money at that time, well, on me. I actually left the forum, found an ATM, got out some money, which I really didn't have to spare, and paid him for that book right there. And ended up having to pay for another book because I went through that book so much. That book was like a Bible. Like, the copies I have of it is torn up. But one of the things he talked about in there was 5 sexual personality types. And one thing he pointed out, this is very subconscious. It's not like people could just say, oh, I'm going to just be this. It's actually some deep stuff. And even though I said I'm not going to go that deep, I'm going to have to go deep a little bit about these personality types just to point out how they were created. Now, this is something that I've been studying since 1998. So I've had nearly 20 years, 19 years, but of studying this information and also applying it in real life and reading people. Like, one of the secrets I have is that if I encounter a woman, I would say I could just look at her and with a 70% accuracy know what her sexual personality type is. That's before she even utters a word. Now, within a conversation with a woman, that goes up to 80. And if I get to know her, probably 90. There's always like some little X factor, but I can look at somebody, and I've looked at some women and they'll say, how'd you know she would do that? Or how you know I would do this or that? Or I was like, But it's a very important thing for men to know a woman's sexual personality type, because the reality is the biggest impediment to healthy relationships out here is that people mate with someone who they naturally incompatible with. Let me say that again. People naturally mate with people who they incompatible with because they looking at other stuff and they not thinking about the actual sexual personality. The person might look good on the surface, even physically look good, but they might not match that person. And that's what causes a lot of trouble. So, wanted to do that. And just, as I said, it's some information. I initially learned it from Master Yao, but there were other people who talked about aspects of it. There are other people such as William Reich. Look up that name. He wrote a book called Characterology. Barbara Ann Brennan. Look up that name. And also, many indigenous cultures classified their people according to different elements. For example, Malidoma Somé, a West African shaman, he talked about how his people classified people according to the elements of water, fire, earth, wood, and metal. And that's actually a system that I use for a personal thing. So, and they, like anything, it's like some different nuances between them, but what I've done, and just through the study of all of this, is kind of brought it together. In such a way, I'll be presented in such a way where, well, I'm not going to get, like I said, I'm not going to get into like all the aspects. I just want to get into the sexual personality part. Now, someone who's familiar with counterfeit personas or indigenous ways of classifying, they might say, well, of course, Rom didn't say this or that. It's like, no. Like I said, I want a person who's never been introduced to this information to get a general idea. So, anyway, sit back, enjoy, and definitely take some notes. And as I'm talking, as I talk about each personality structure, I want you to get an idea or have an idea about how you've met like this different personality, or how have you encountered this person. So anyway, sit back and relax, and let's get started.